What if we took 14-time All-NBA center Shaquille O'Neal and turned him into a Pokemon? This is a series where we take all-time NBA players and turn them into Pokemon complete with typing, abilities, movesets, stats, and more. Then compare them to some actual Pokemon that already exist. With that being said, let's turn Shaq into a Pokemon. Shaq was one of the most physically dominant players to ever play the game of basketball, so it's fair to say that he deserves to have a move pool that mainly consists of physical attacks and a typing that represents something as strong and powerful as he is, which is why we're going to make him a rock and ground type. Rock and ground type pair really well with each other, and very few Pokemon types can naturally resist this combination, just like very few players can resist the presence of Shaq on the offensive end. Rock types also have one of the highest defensive stats in Pokemon, making Shaq's 2.3 blocks per game an ideal stat to fit in this typing. Ironically though, Shaq was only a part of 3 All-NBA defensive teams. Offensively, as a ground type, Shaq will be super effective against 5 types of Pokemon, which is tied with fighting as the most super effective matchup. Now, there was a big part of me that considered making Shaq a Steel type, but ultimately I decided against it, and here's why. Steel type Pokemon have the highest defense among all Pokemon, and as I alluded to earlier, Shaq was only part of 3 All-NBA defensive teams, and never even made Defensive Player of the Year. Don't get me wrong, Shaq's an amazing defensive player, and he still deserves to have a high defensive stat, as he was blocking 2.3 shots for his career, and averaged 3.2 blocks per game for his first 2 seasons, while grabbing over 13 rebounds per game. But I think if you're going to be a Steel type Pokemon, you need to at least win DPOI once in your career. Now, one of the biggest drawbacks to the rock and ground typing combination is going up against water types. And while Shaq did shoot 58% from the field for his career, his actual jumper was, well, let's just say it's not water.
2, 1. Oh my god!
Now, we need to pick out some moves for Shaq's move pool and give him the ideal move set. I'm imagining a move pool that kind of looks like this, with the ability to also learn moves through TMs such as Smackdown, Earthquake, Superpower, Heavy Slam, Stomping Tantrum, Taunt, and Encore. I could also see him learning old HM moves such as Rock Smash and Strength for whenever there's a boulder that needs to be moved or a big rock that needs to be smashed. His ideal moveset, in my opinion, would look more like Earthquake, Encore, Giga Impact, and Bulldoze. These moves make the most sense to me, as Shaq was a player that made a Giga Impact on the floor and was able to bulldoze his way through opponents while also playing to the crowd and earning Encores for his performance. He caused earthquakes on the floor too, with his power and size and the ability to bring opponents and hoops to the knees. For his base stats, I'm thinking of something that looks like this. With an attack of 140 and a defense of 130, this gives Shaq a high balance of offense and defense. He's got a decent amount of health, since Shaq was mainly healthy during his career, except for a few seasons and toward the back end of his career. As for his abilities, we're going to give him the Solid Rock ability. This ability reduces damage from super effective moves by 25%, and since Shaq was as solid as they come for a center, moves other big men made when playing that would normally be super effective would be reduced when playing against Shaq. Second ability we're going to give him is the Intimidate ability, which lowers attack stats of the opposing Pokemon when entering a battle. This fits nicely with the Solid Rock ability and makes sense as it's easy to be intimidated by Shaq when playing against him. For Shaq's evolution line, I think a good starter would be Glenn Big Baby Davis. Davis was known as a big body when playing the NBA, and had some small skill set, but didn't really make much of an impact. His stature resembles that of a mini Shaq though, and he had the personality to express his goofiness. Davis will evolve into Zion Williamson, which is known as another big man presence that bulldozes his way through the opponents and plays extremely well around the rim. This makes sense as Zion is definitely more talented than Glenn Davis and is already a better player, but he still has ways to go before he's considered an all-time great like Shaq. And then finally, Zion will evolve into Shaq as a final evolution. One of the first Pokemon that come to mind when I think of Shaq is Snorlax. Although it's a normal type, the height of Snorlax is very close to Shaq, and they both weigh extremely heavy amounts, with Shaq weighing in at 324 pounds and Snorlax weighing in over 1,000 pounds. Snorlax is able to learn a lot of the moves that were given to Shaq, like Earthquake, Bulldoze, and Giga Impact. Another Pokemon that comes to mind with Shaq is Rhyperior, as it's a ground and rock type Pokemon that has a frame to be built like Shaq. With a height of 7'10" and weighing in at a whopping 623 pounds, it makes sense that Rhyperior is closely resembled to Shaq. I'd also be a bit afraid to get hit by one of those elbows. Here's Shaq with his full typing, move pool, abilities, and evolution line. we're going to nickname him the Diesel Pokemon. And with that, thank you guys for watching it up to this point. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Let me know what you would change about Shaq as a Pokemon down below, and what NBA player I should turn into a Pokemon next.